You wake up tomorrow morning, and for the first time in your life, you have absolutely nothing you have to do. No emails, no commute, no boss, no bills, just a full day of complete, unadulterated freedom. Does that sound like a vacation? Or does that sound like a terrifying void? For 300,000 years, that void was the default setting for every single one of your ancestors. Today, we spend 90,000 hours of our lives working. That's a third of our existence dedicated to a career ladder that didn't even exist for 99% of human history. So, if humans weren't employed, how exactly did we fill our time? And why does the modern human, with all our technology and convenience, feel so much more exhausted than the people who were supposedly just trying to survive? The answer isn't what you think. It isn't a story of constant, backbreaking struggle. It's a story of a lost rhythm, a hidden way of living that our bodies still crave, and it's hiding in plain sight. For decades, we've been told that pre-agricultural life was nasty, brutish, and short. But the archaeological evidence is starting to tell a radically different story. Look at the skeleton of an early farmer from 8,000 years ago, and you see a body broken by repetitive stress, arthritis in the spine, dental decay from a grain-heavy diet, and signs of chronic nutritional deficiency. Now compare that to the remains of a hunter-gatherer from 20,000 years ago. Taller, denser bones, healthier teeth, and remarkably few signs of the physical wear and tear we associate with hard labor. How is that possible? In 1963, anthropologist Richard Lee lived with the Dobju Hwansi of the Kalahari. He spent months meticulously logging every minute of their day. What he found sent shockwaves through the scientific community. These people weren't working from sunup to sundown. They spent, on average, less than 20 hours a week acquiring food. The rest of the time, they were playing, grooming, laughing, and doing absolutely nothing at all. But why were they so successful? Because they weren't competing, they were cooperating. You see, in a world without money or written contracts, your survival didn't depend on how hard you worked for a boss. It depended entirely on your reputation. If you were a selfish hunter or you didn't share your berries, you didn't just get fired, you got isolated. And in the Pleistocene, isolation was a death sentence. So the most important job you had wasn't hunting, it was social maintenance. But this brings up a massive haunting question. If they had so much free time, why didn't they just sit around and wait for the world to end? Why do we find 40,000-year-old flutes carved from vulture bones? Why do we find jewelry made from shells hauled hundreds of miles inland? Because humans have a desperate biological need to create. When you aren't forced to trade your time for survival, you don't stop being productive, you start being creative. You paint lions on cave walls with shading and perspective that would make a Renaissance artist jealous. You invent music. You tell stories that weave the cosmos together. But then 10,000 years ago, we hit the agricultural trap. We stopped being masters of our own time and started being servants to the seed. We traded our freedom for food security, and in doing so, we created the first generation of people who were too busy to live. Think about your own life. When was the last time you sat in total silence, with no screen, no music, and no objective, just to see what your own mind would do? We've replaced that ancient reflective silence with a constant stream of low-grade stimulation. We've even lost our sleep. Remember that first sleep and second sleep we used to have? For thousands of years, humans woke up for an hour in the middle of the night. They didn't panic. They didn't check their phones. They lay there in the dark, thinking, dreaming, and reflecting. It was a bridge between the physical and the subconscious. We look at that today and call it insomnia, a medical condition to be fixed with pills or blue light filters. But what if you aren't broken? What if your body is just trying to remember a rhythm that's been hard-coded into your DNA for 300 millennia? Every time you feel that mid-afternoon burnout or that midnight anxiety, you are feeling the collision between a Paleolithic brain and a 21st century schedule. You are an animal designed for long, slow social connection and periods of deep creative stillness, forced into a life of high-speed, disconnected output. So what is the payoff for understanding this? It isn't that you should move to the woods and start hunting with a spear. That's not the point. The point is to reclaim the human parts of your day that we've labeled as unproductive. When you choose to spend time building a relationship instead of networking, when you make art instead of consuming content, when you sit in the dark and let your mind wander instead of medicating your restlessness, you aren't wasting time. You are participating in the exact same life your ancestors led for 99% of our history. You are proving that while we may have traded our freedom for the comforts of the modern world, the spirit that made those first cave paintings, the spirit that carved those first flutes, is still sitting there, waiting for you to realize that you were never designed to just be a worker. You were designed to be human, and that in itself is a full-time job.